So there's been a big announcement. Oh gosh, I have to find Barb's tab of these 300. I think is it that one? No. Yes. Got it first time. Let's welcome to the show the finance spokesperson for Labour. It is only bloody Barbara Edmonds. Kia ora, Barb.
What's up? Kia ora, everybody.
What's up?
What's up?
That's very 90s. It ages us a bit, doesn't it?
Well, it's also a tribute to D'Angelo, who, I'm a 90s, early 2000s
that's a
music.
deep
So
cut.
just I want to, I haven't been able to do a speech in the House yet, but loved his music and, rest in peace.
I saw the bass player from Limp Bizkit, 48, passed away as well. I am certainly in the 90s. I traveled between quite serious and hardcore hip hop. NWA was one of my first albums, 88, 87, and sort of across to the dance scene, into the rap core, new metal scene as well. If it's got a beat, I used to love it. Saw Limp Bizkit, A Big Day Out, one of the scariest moments of my life, being in a crowd that lifted me off my feet, moved me back on a 45-degree angle, put me back down on the ground facing the opposite way. I could do nothing about it. It was quite terrifying. So yeah, thanks Limp Bizkit. Thanks Fred. Yes, that was sad to see over the weekend as well. That 48. No details on what the death was, but too young anyway. Whatever happened. Anywho, Chewie, do you want to talk about someone dying or a favourite music memory while we're here? We've got all the time in the world.
I was just going to say it is always really telling when a musician, especially an influential one, dies, and you see just the effect ripple through the internet of people. Like, both of them were really, really young. But I've seen people going, man, D'Angelo, like I listened to that a lot in my mid-teens, and that's a really formative time for music, and people sort of going, look, this man had like literally the perfect album, and then he did it again. But he's not one of those ones that had just like a massive mainstream breakthrough. It was just consistently good and influenced so many people. So when it's someone of your generation and they die early, and it's an influential musician or that sort of, or artist in any way, really, it's a gut punch. It's always a gut punch.
Oh, it'll definitely come up on my Spotify most played lists this year at the end of the year, my Spotify rap,
I was thinking maybe we just forget the news and we can talk music for the next 20 minutes. I mean, I'm down with that. Anyway, I am slightly joking. I'm kind of not joking, but I kind of am. I think we could do that, Chewie, next time, maybe next year. Do like a spot with a politician talking music. A pivot.
We've been promising a pivot. Got to change the government first. Got to stay on task.
All right. Then once they're in and their hands are on movies and music. Movie and music reviews. Very good. Hey, Barb, thanks for joining us. I think what we'll do, if you're cool, because we're going to have a look at the 3 news stories. You're in it, so it's always a bit weird doing this, but it's a good way to kind of set the scene for everybody else and for us to bounce off the back of and just understand more about what's going on. So this is the big announcement today. Fair to say the first announcement, the kind of start of a 12-month run up to the election. Is it fair to put that in there? This is number one?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the first step, and the Future Fund is the first step in a wider economic plan. So, It was a big day, and had some really good responses, and so it's the best you can ask for.
Yeah. All right, let's get into it. Let's have a look what the whole thing's about, and then we'll ask you some questions, and then you can tell us again what the whole thing's about.
The Labor Party has released its first major policy ahead of next year's election, calling for an investment fund that could reduce the need for taxes. Labor leader Chris Hipkins announced his party's Future Fund policy, pitching it as a way to grow the economy, pay the bills and build local infrastructure. Political reporter Glenn McConnell was there as Labor kicked off its campaign.
2026, here we come.
Well, kia ora koutou, everybody. It's great to be here, so thank you for joining us for the Labor Party's first significant policy announcement.
Chris Hipkins is officially in campaign mode, out asking voters for his old job back.
We didn't have a politician in there.
Yeah, that's all right. We can go with founder.
His first policy to give a shot in the arm to Kiwi startups.
Today we're announcing the establishment of the New Zealand Future Fund. It will be one of the cornerstone measures of our next Labor government.
Labour wants to put $200 million into an investment fund that could only invest in New Zealand companies and infrastructure.
The super fund does invest offshore. Only about 11 to 18% is invested here in New Zealand.
You guys looking for like any investments in, startup media companies and stuff? Just I'm asking for a friend. Any? No?
If,
Yes? Okay.
if it meets the public good and the guardians of the future fund believe so, then there are always opportunities there.
All right. Guardians of the Future. That sounds like a movie trilogy. Guardians of the Future Fund. Wow, amazing.
Putting a line in the sand and saying, we want to create the wealth here in New Zealand.
This Hamilton company has invented a tool to help first responders and soldiers insert IV lines. It's a lifesaver.
But really, to commercialise this product globally, we need lots of money.
Overseas, similar state investment funds are making big money. Singapore's 50-year-old investment fund returned more than $13 billion to its government last year.
They started from fairly small, humble beginnings, but have grown over time. With a lot of these funds, it does take quite a while for you to sort of reach that critical mass.
This will be a uniquely New Zealand fund, by New Zealand for New Zealand, so it won't be modelled exactly on any other fund that exists around the world.
Of course, there is a question there if a business isn't good enough to get lending from the bank, does it deserve to get money from people? But there is a clear concern that keeps coming up from businesses around that access to capital.
Christopher Luxon, not a fan.
If you look at it over the last 3 years, there's anywhere from $600 to $800 million worth of dividends. Well, that money is actually used to pay for health and education. So where's that going to come from?
But Winston Peters is interested in the idea. In fact, he says he came up with it.
Sorry, do you need to take a breath?
Of course.
Barb, Winston's A, interested, and B, taking credit. Are we, breathe again. Here we go.
Peters saying this is the Chris Hipkins version of a New Zealand First policy. Hipkins saying he never stole Winston Peters' idea.
That conference, they spent most of it slagging us off instead.
Slagging each other off, posing for photos and meeting babies. Welcome to the start of the election season. We have about a year to go.
Right. Okay. So it's been laid out as a rodeo clown from Dunedin. I think let's just talk about one business. They can apply to a fund, government money, they can get the money out, and then they return the government a dividend or the fund a dividend. That grows, that gets used to help in places that currently are taxpayer-funded infrastructure, da-da-da-da-da. Is that real simple, real basic?
Yeah, and reinvesting back in our economy, right? So currently the government's plan to get us out of the doldrums is to rely on foreign investment and speculators. But we're quite clearly saying there's a difference. Labor believes we have the skills, talent, and the ideas here, so we just want to back it. And the Future Fund is one way and our first step to doing that. 200
million, and this is because we're so highfalutin, Barb, doesn't sound like a lot. Is this just like step one, or what's the, I mean, like if you're going to look for, like when I hear about Singapore $13 billion return, I imagine, I'm not saying 200 million is going to do that, but that must be a huge investment to get that. So step one, 200 million, what's the thoughts down the track?
Yeah, so that's the one-off capital injection. And then we're also going to seed the fund with some government-owned assets and commercially viable assets that, their dividend gets reinvested in the fund and reinvested into the public good, which we'll put through legislation. So Temasek, for example, that was referenced in that media article, they grew from 450 million. They had a steel mill, they had a dry cleaner, but the Singaporean government, 30 years ago said, well, we need to create the wealth here in Singapore, so we're going to back them. But there's also different wealth funds across most countries and also in states in Australia. Auckland just got their own future fund. We've got the iwi leaders who are doing their Kotahitanga fund. So ultimately, New Zealand doesn't have one that is purpose-built to reinvest in New Zealand. We do have other wealth funds, but they have a different purpose.
So when you say like state-owned enterprises are going kind of into it as well, so you're putting 200 million cash in, and then when you say they're going, so let's think about a gentailer, like a power company that we still own 51% of. How does that actually work? What kind of entity does that look like? Does that mean that basically you're giving / donating / selling the gentailer to this new fund, and then the profits from that gentailer becomes a part of the money to invest back in and help the economy? Can you just unpack it a little bit?
Yeah. So the assets that's transferred into the fund, the Crown still owns the fund. The sole shareholder is the minister.
So transferred doesn't mean like it's a paper shuffle. It's a paper sale to the
fund.
New entity. Gotcha.
And
okay.
also, that'll require legislation as well. In some instances, we haven't said what commercial assets we're going to seed the fund with, and that's for a really good reason. There are commercial sensitivities around different assets. Some are listed, some aren't. There'll be market disclosures, but ultimately, in the same way that the New Zealand Super Fund invests offshore, or that 11 to 18% onshore, we're just saying you have to reinvest the dividends back in New Zealand only.
Okay. So when I said Jen Taylor, I'm not looking to pull something out of you, but that's what we're talking about. Like Air New Zealand is partially owned by us, the generation companies are partly owned, but those sorts of entities that we think of, those sorts of assets.
Yeah, commercial entities, and there may be state-owned entities as well, because they're all held in different ways.
I don't know, Chewie, if this feels like about as close as you ever heard to. Let's nationalise it, but you must have some questions for Barb. It's your favourite thing.
I watched the announcement when I got home from work, and I was just like, you've cracked it. This is what we've been talking about, that New Zealand's economy is unproductive because we just trade old houses backwards and forwards, and that's how we grow our wealth. National have identified that we have an unproductive economy and are just completely flummoxed on what to do about it. And here you've found a way to potentially kickstart something with some real legs, some long-term thinking, which again is something that National don't do well, without doing one of my fever dreams, which is just crash the housing economy and see what happens, which would of course piss everybody off. So you found a really good middle ground here, and those examples of the Singaporean fund, there's the Irish wealth fund,
Irish,
and that sort of
Scottish, there's plenty of future funds. Canada has some amazing funds as well. I mean, one economist described it to me as being catalytic. It's about catalyzing that innovation and tech in New Zealand. So, we're happy with how this landed. Obviously, there is work that we will continue in government because we need to confirm the assets that we're going to transfer into the fund. But ultimately, this is the first step for us to say, we've got the stuff here. We've got the skills and ideas here. We want to back Kiwis.
Yeah. So my question that I have, and this is kind of, it's not just about this fund, but also the Cullen Fund. And when you come up with a piece of policy, which is like, this is a long-term thing, what do you guys do to safeguard it from, when the wheel turns again and we get National in and they look at this big pot of money and they go, well, we'll just smash that piggy bank now, thanks.
From
Muldoon
pulling out of the retirement scheme, from Muldoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really pity that future far-right government who wants to say to New Zealand, we don't believe we should invest in ourselves. So one, obviously, the super fund, that has grown over years, and New Zealand loves it and expects it, to help with super costs in the future. Ultimately, our state-owned enterprises, they're ready for sale, really. But what we're saying is there's an additional barrier to this, which is the legislation, that the investment has to be reinvested in New Zealand, or the dividend. Also, the element of the social license for this. We're hearing people say to us up and down the country, my kids want to go on their OE, but the pull to come back to New Zealand is really hard for them. They're looking to Aussie rather than coming back here. Someone has to start this work. Someone has to put that line in the sand and say, well, we're going to back New Zealand, back our kids, provide them with opportunities to stay here at home or come back home.
Why did you feel the need to make this announcement now? I think, and I'm happy to be corrected, but I think that when National had their last run into the election, they didn't start until like February of the year of. And I know everyone's been screaming out, policy, but there's no need for it to be released quite yet. Why have you decided now over closer to Christmas or even the start of next year?
So it's the first step in our wider economic plan, and between now and Christmas, we will be releasing further policies, including the policy that you referenced or inferred.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. I've got no idea.
But, you know, I mean, I travel a lot for work, both in business communities. I was just down in South Auckland on Friday speaking to social service providers. You know, they're constantly saying to me, give us a vision, give us hope, and give us a plan. So we believe that now is the right time to be able to start to pull together that vision and plan, you know, a future made in New Zealand by New Zealanders. So this is the starting point. We've got more to come. But ultimately, we think the timing is right, given that the government has no plan and they were elected on the promise to make things better, but it's just gotten worse.
I mean, it's perfectly good time to strike now. The iron is hot for people being annoyed about the direction New Zealand's going on when it comes to the economy. Chewie, I'm going to go to Mike Hosking's questions next. Do you want anything else on the nationalising of everything before we move on?
My other comment of what I like about this policy is a little bit more vibes based. We don't hear so much about the investment into our country by ourselves. We mainly hear about overseas investment, and then we find out what that really means. You know, our banks, Fonterra, all of that sort of stuff. We come up with an idea, someone makes a shitload of money out of it, and it's not us. It's just great to see that to be essentially a linchpin in what Labour is going to campaign on.
It's a real key difference between us and the Nats. Yeah,
100%. It's great to see.
And so, like, is your branding going into the next election going to be something like, you know, getting New Zealand back on track? Is that something you could go with? Is that, you know, just thinking?
That is used and dragged through the mud, and we are definitely not going to use that, and we're not going to overpromise like that because the train has totally derailed.
Speaking of used and dragged through the mud, Mike Hosking. Mike Hosking had Christopher Luxon on this morning, and I'd like your response as the finance spokesperson for Labour, and Chewie. I mean, I'd like to hear from you as well to do with this broadcaster who got so very, very, very close to asking the right question. It must have gone up to his upper palate and nearly come out and just didn't quite get there. He was talking to Mr. Luxon about, you know, paying public servants more. If only we had the money.
Yeah, but this is where I get I have an element of sympathy here because of your fiscal constraints. What they're arguing over is 1%, 2%, and they're going, well, inflation's 2.7, we're actually going backwards, which is a mathematical fact. Would you pay them more if you had the money?
Yeah, we would. If we were a wealthier economy, like we see in other countries, think about Ireland, twice as wealthy per person as New Zealand, got twice as many teachers, they can pay their people more. But, you know, the irony in here is that it was Labour that actually tripled the debt.
So there's this obvious question. We're all thinking, every single person watching this show, every single one is thinking of the obvious follow-up question.
Made us make $9 billion worth of interest payments, and we've got to make the country wealthier. When we make it wealthier, we can afford better public services as well.
This is the problem. Every time I've had a unionist on this program,
and he's even talked about unions. The unions come on, so you know Mike's got, because you know what the unions are going to say. They're going to point to our spending, right? So it's on the tip of his tongue.
I asked the inevitable question, which is: we have no money. We have less than no money. Where do you want that money to come from? And their answer is consistent. That is, tax people more.
Yeah, well, borrow more, tax more, spend more, right? That's the thing, and
So
that's what's
close.
caused the mess. That's what's caused inflation and interest rates go through the roof and cause suffering for regular working folk in New Zealand.
So apparently the unions come on and all his magnanimousness, Mike Hosking goes, but where is this money going to come from? And they go, tax is the only answer. Because I think that, I was speaking to Craig Rennie today, and I said to him, the government has removed from our coffers. I don't like saying given away, because some people will go, well, they don't give away, it's our money. So, okay, fine. So we'll just say has removed from the pot of money, for whatever reason, to run this country $17 billion. And Craig, in all his nerdy wonder, goes, $23 billion. So Christopher Luxon is sitting here going, if only we had some more money. Oh, my aching heart. We could maybe pay these nurses 1% more. And we're going, you know, that 1.5 billion that you've given to tobacco companies and those billions of dollars in landlord reimbursements and tax cuts, are we including that? But the question didn't come up, Barb, and I've got some guesses as to why maybe it didn't, but it seems like a missed opportunity. I'd love to get your thoughts on that though, mate.
Yeah, budgets are all about choices. I've said that on this show before, and the government chose where they were going to prioritise their money.
Yeah.
We've seen that with the removal of the digital services tax bill that was on the order paper that had a 500 million tax cut for overseas tech companies. That gave them a tax cut. We saw $2.9 billion of landlords. We've seen the tax cuts over the last 2 years. These are all choices the government makes, including the tobacco company, the HTPs, the subsidies are given there. I mean, when I hear Luxon saying borrow, tax, spend more, bro, like you're borrowed more, you're basically disguising taxes as levies and passing the cost on to Kiwis. And you've spent money in areas which I'm pretty sure that's why the doctors, nurses, and the teachers and the healthcare workers are striking, because they've totally prioritised other areas, but not the basic social infrastructure that we need here in New Zealand. So, they can say whatever they like. There is no money there, but actually they've put us in a more worse position. And as a result, board directors get more money, MPs got pay rises. These are all choices.
Yeah. I've got another a clip to play, Chewie, but you got any thoughts around that one first?
I've got so many thoughts around this. First of all, hit the Judith Collins button.
Oh, I can't. It's not loaded up. Keep talking. Pad.
No.
Pad.
Look, if the money needs to be found, then we will find the money. But in Judith Collins' voice. This is the consistent lie. This is the lie that they keep saying, is that the economy is so bad that they don't have enough money, that there's no... We'd love to pay nurses and teachers more. We just simply can't. Look at the moths coming out of the finance budget. It's gone. But yeah, we all know that they have given away billions. We all know that they can find the money if they want to buy helicopters. So it's kind of this thing of like turning around to your mate who really needs the money and going, sorry, man, I'm flush, as you fill up your car.
As you drive away,
right to the fucking brim on your new car. Like, it's just foolish. I saw today, and forgive me, we're going to rip through just some amazing graphs. The excellent musical chairs account on Blue Skies just tore this repeated line apart. Only New Zealand becoming wealthier can we afford to spend more. We're in good company with countries that can afford to spend more. The government spend per capita. Look, only by New Zealand becoming wealthier can we afford to spend more. We're right up here. What is he talking about?
So do you remember a couple of weeks ago I had the mood of the boardroom, and some of the CE comments were really cutting in relation to both MOF and to PM. There was like, cut the political spin and, where's the thought leadership? Yeah, this is a lot of the political spin, right?
So you're saying that people that know numbers, because they run businesses, can see right through this. They know that they're not hearing this from their people that understand numbers. It's not meant for them. They're going to vote National anyway, 9 times out of 10. But this is going out to the public and just repeating the line, Labor borrowed heaps during COVID. You know that there was free money given out because you all fucking got some. So don't look into comparisons about our debt loading under John Key, our debt loading under Ardern, and our debt loading now. Don't look at that. It's very unkind to the national government. Please chat, don't Google it. Don't go and look for the numbers. It's very, very bad. But they're going to repeat the line because that's what people that aren't going to look at this stuff are going to take with them because they heard it on ZB, they heard it on Hoskins, they heard it on the platform. And unfortunately, they're hearing it in our mainstream news as well, completely without any context. They're going to take that to the election. And that's your job, is to break that perception and show it for the absolute farce that it is. It's a big job.
Well, the fact that the finance spokesperson for Labour rated higher than the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister,
we noticed that. We pointed that out quite strongly.
National losing the boardroom is like Labour losing our unions. This is their base. Yeah. And their base is saying, cut through the crap, give us a plan, give us a vision, because at the moment you keep blaming the other people. Well, actually, Nicola Willis blamed John Key at that particular event, but you're running out of people to blame. People are sick of the excuses. What's the bloody plan?
This flows into the next question quite well, because we're going to have a look at inflation, because one of the things you notice in this, and again, Hosking is so close to asking the right question, because you'll hear Hosking actually feed Luxon all the things that Luxon's blaming. But what Hosking doesn't then do is go, when are you going to take some responsibility? He doesn't ask that question, but he lists all the things that Luxon and this government are blaming for where we're at.
What's inflation today, and does it worry you?
Look, it'll be interesting. I mean, it could bounce around. I don't know the number. I haven't been told. But it could be, as you've heard people say, it could be bouncing in around 3%. What the Reserve Bank of New Zealand looks at and what we sort of look at is what's the medium-term inflation. It's supposed to be 2% next year, which gives them confidence to keep lowering rates. I think there'll be a bit of swings and roundabouts. You're seeing massive growth in red meat prices around the world. Yep. You're seeing, dairy. On the other hand, you've got rents the lowest it's been, I think, since 2011 at the moment.
Yeah, rents are good.
And interest rates coming down.
Yeah, but the problem is what you're worried about politically.
Council rates, a big part of it too.
Yeah, exactly. So
12.5%.
Exactly. So the council's the problem, the power company's the problem, the insurance company's the problem. And so what do you do about that?
What do you do about that? The question is, Michael, when are you going to take some responsibility? That's the question. That's the question. This guy wins the broadcasting award every year. That's the question. The power companies, the this, the that, you're blaming all of them all the time. Labour, John Key apparently gets blamed as well. When are you going to take some responsibility? But unfortunately, his vernacular doesn't quite get there.
What's the problem? The power company's the problem, the insurance company's the problem. And so what do you do about that? Because that's the political part of the equation, isn't it?
The biggest part of it is council rates. It's about 12.5%, and you think about inflation running at 2.7 today. So it's a big contributor to it's about, I think, 35 basis points of that is actual council rates. That's why we want to explore council caps, rate caps, because actually to make sure councils are using their balance sheets appropriately.
When you say explore...
I want to get to a conversation we always get to when we hear about capping rates, Barb, which is a little side note. We'll come back. And that's places like Gore that need $300 million to comply with their water infrastructure. So when we cap rates and they need $300 million amongst 6,000 ratepayers, that's $50,000 per ratepayer. So those ratepayers could be paying an additional $5,000 each for the next 10 years on top of what they're paying now to get their infrastructure up to standard. And this government, funded by people, whoever is behind the messaging with Ruth Richardson on Q&A, talking about cap rates now, is going to see this country and our infrastructure and councils go backwards further and further and further. I don't know what's below the third world country, but heading in that direction. It's a bit of a bugbear of ours overall, but you are the spokesperson for finance. I'd love to get your take on inflation today and what you just heard from Mr. Luxon.
Yeah, same thing. Spin. When are you going to take accountability and stop adding to the list of people that you're blaming for actually what is your job? A lot of the inflation pressures that we're getting that are sticky are administered costs. Those are the things that you really hard to avoid and really hard for monetary policy to actually make a dent in. So he talked about energy. Well, they sat on that energy report that was done for them, close to a year. Labor wrote to them, Dr. Megan Woods wrote to them in August and said, let's do a bipartisan strategy. Let's try and, find some areas we agree on to provide certainty. But, I asked Chris Bishop just last week in the House when he was acting Minister of Finance, will his measures or his response to that report bring down energy prices? And he goes, oh, it will bring downward pressure. They've sat on this stuff for way too long. And so that's why you expect this. Also, I'm pretty sure there was a previous Labor government that had an idea about how to deal with water infrastructure.
Sort of a centralized idea where
economies of scale.
where we could maybe help Gore out a little bit if they needed it because we're doing okay, and like we could flick them a couple of bucks, and there was a solution to that. But I don't know, what was there one? I've always said if only there was, but you're saying there was one. I don't remember.
Yeah. If only there was, and that they hadn't stopped it, and then again taken another 18 months to get their own policy underway. This is the thing with the National Party. They make decisions and choices, pull the handbrake up. Yes, it leads to 20,000 construction sector roles going, but then they blame it on interest rates. And yet it's the government stuff. It's the government spending that is meant to smooth the cycles. Again, more blame game and less accountability, but that seems to be the MO of this government. And if they're going to keep taking that into next year, into next election, people are getting pretty sick of it now. It's only going to get worse for them.
Chewie, anything to finish off?
Yeah, a question for you, Barb. Realistically, how much effect does a government have on interest rates? Like for a trading nation like New Zealand?
So monetary policy does need friends. That's what you hear a lot. And then they say fiscal policy, right? So they say, constrained fiscal spending helps remove demand from the economy, which means, therefore, prices aren't pushed up, for example. However, there's a really good speech that Paul Conway, the Reserve Bank chief economist, talked about last week, I think it was, and talked about the COVID spending and some of the decisions that they had made. There is inflation during COVID. You would have seen what's called tradable inflation coming into New Zealand. That was super high, and that has now balanced. So tradable inflation has come down a bit, but it's this non-tradable stuff, the administered costs. That's where fiscal policy, because monetary policy can't really do the work in that space. They can hike interest rates and remove demand from the construction sector, borrowing, construction sector, by the private market, but ultimately they have to work together to help with the cycle. And what you're seeing with this government is basically, they've brought down, tradable inflation has come down because of international events, but then they're blaming international events for why inflation is up or business uncertainty. So whoever's basically advising the Minister of Finance, she needs to kind of get that story straight of where it is. But ultimately, again, going back to the very beginning, 2023, they campaigned on making things better, but it's only gone worse.
Yep. Hey, it's always a pleasure. When you talk about Mr. Luxon here and you're kind of mimicking, talking to him, and you go, bro, I just hope you do that in the House one day. Bro. I'd be down for that.
I'm definitely reflecting what the communities are saying to me, and that's what they're saying. It's like, bro, what do you mean about this? Like, it's still
save it for the debates. Can you imagine you're debating with Nicola Willis and you just hit her with a bro? I think you'll knock her over.
Oh no, I'd be like uso, which is if you're a boy to another boy, it's uso. So be like uso.
Just before you go, Peter says, love the design aesthetic on the branding for the new things. There you go. Got a thumbs up for the branding. And Gold says, if an idea is a good one, no one should be surprised if others come up with it independently. I take this as Winnie agreeing it's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing about actually being a public servant and being someone wanting to feather their own nest. If someone steals your idea and they get it through, why would you be bitching about it? Like it's a good idea. If it was, not saying it is, but if it was. Public servant, maybe. Hey, Barb, Fantastic. Now, when are we booking in that time to talk about the CGT? Just so I can put it in the diary. Is that no?
Future announcements will be made in the future before the end of the year. But you know, I will be fronting up to you fellas when that announcement is made.
First day.
You almost got her there.
We want it first. Yeah, nearly. Hey, Barb, thanks, man. It's always good to talk to you. Appreciate you cutting through all the bullshit and just being a part of this and helping us understand what's happening behind the scenes as well.
Good. Oh, all good. And thank you for the platform that you're doing. Not the platform, but the, and also to your patrons for supporting you.
Yeah. Thanks, Barb. We'll talk to you next time.
Right,
all the best.